Just imagine, a cold night, rain pounding hard on the asphalt, people running for cover. But there, almost invisible on the wet sidewalk, stands Gabriel, a boy just 8 years old, his clothes torn, his eyes brimming with hunger and hope. He clings tightly to a golden necklace, the only thing he has left from the mother he lost. Trying to warm up, Gabriel gazes inside a fancy restaurant, where men in suits don't even notice who's freezing outside. That's when Enrique, a millionaire used to seeing no one but his own reflection, locks eyes for a moment with Gabriel. It's a fleeting, uncomfortable glance, until Enrique catches the glint of the necklace around the boy's neck. And in a split second, everything changes. That pendant holds a secret from the past that could turn both their lives upside down. Why does this boy unsettle him so much? What will Enrique do now? Was this just a coincidence? Or was it fate that set Gabriel in his path? Stay with me to see how a simple rainy night can change everything forever. The sound of the rain that night felt like punishment. It was cold, the kind of rain that pelts your body, not just on the skin, but deep down to where it hurts inside too. Gabriel shuffled along slowly, hunched over, trying to slide his arms inside his old sweater that barely kept him warm anymore. Bare feet stuck to the wet sidewalk, slipping in puddles. Sometimes there were shards or pebbles, but he just pressed his lips together, never complaining. There were things that hurt far more. In the darkness, any light seemed impossibly far away. A car sped past, splashing more water his way, but he didn't even look. Gabriel's gaze stretched out ahead, as if always searching for something that never appeared. No one noticed. The grown-ups scowled, clutching their umbrellas, hurrying by, careful not to get too close. Some even crossed to the other side of the street. Others simply pretended not to see him. With his left hand, he clutched the necklace, trying to shield the pendant from the wind. It was gold, but worn down. Still, to him it was priceless. The last memory of his mother, the only thing left, besides an emptiness that always squeezed tighter when it rained like this. Sometimes Gabriel pressed the pendant to his face, pretending he could feel his mother's hand stroking his thin hair and hear her whisper, "It's all right, my sweet boy." But nothing had been all right for a long, long time. The sky was sealed shut, heavy dark clouds looming over the giant buildings. Thunder boomed, making him jump now and then, but Gabriel never cried. He'd learned, too early, to keep everything inside: fear, hunger, and even the wish to disappear from the street. His stomach grumbled loudly, the kind that makes you embarrassed. It had been ages since he'd last eaten a hard chunk of bread he'd found on a square the afternoon before. It was wet, but he ate it anyway. Now that bitter taste returned, along with the urge to beg someone for food, anything, but even the courage seemed to slip away in the cold. Now and then, he'd take shelter under a tree, just to escape the rain, but the leaves offered no cover. The wind cut through, soaking his tattered shorts that began to hang heavier on his thin legs. Gabriel longed to sit down, give his back a rest, but fear kept him moving. Someone might show up, tell him to move on, or worse. As he walked, his toes grew numb, a little swollen. The ground was hard, but abandonment was worse. He had the big street dogs passing by with envy. At least they had each other, running in packs. Gabriel always seemed alone. With every lightning flash, the pendant glinted beneath his ragged shirt, as if his mother were sending a sign from above. Deep down, he wanted to believe it, because it kept alive that last flicker of hope, that maybe, somewhere, someone could care, could see him. Cars kept passing. Well-dressed people stepped out of lobbies under huge umbrellas, moving quickly. I stuck to their phones, never to the sides. All the while, it felt like the city spun too fast, and Gabriel moved the other way, like a ghost, invisible, someone nobody wanted to see. Sometimes Gabriel would sit anywhere he could find, a step, crouching, knees pulled to his chest. The sound of traffic faded when the wind picked up, mixed with the sour stench from open drains. The boy squeezed his eyes shut, trying to recall his mother's face, a day when he'd felt truly warm, truly at home. But he always came back to that weight on his chest, the hunger, the longing for a hug. His greatest fear wasn't the street, the rain, or even the cold. It was losing the necklace. All day, he'd check if the pendant was still there, tugging it tighter under his clothes. Sometimes, in those silent seconds between thunderclaps, he'd imagine what it would be like to lose the last piece he had left of her. Just the thought made his heart thump with fear, and his hand would sweat cold, no matter how chilly it was. People walked past, not noticing his condition. You couldn't say if the look in his eyes was pain, or just emptiness. He forced himself to keep walking, scraped knees, head hanging. When cars stopped at red lights, he gazed from a distance, always too afraid to ask for anything. All he wanted was bread, a hot cup of coffee, anything at all. And suddenly the cold seemed to bite deeper, hand in hand with loneliness. All he could hear was the hammering rain, his growling stomach, and far off, muffled laughter from inside the warm buildings. Inside was light, food, good smells. Out here, there was only the scent of rain, the cutting wind, and the feeling that the world forgot everyone too small to be seen. Gabriel kept going. Each step was harder, like his whole body weighed more and more. He kept at it, because even without knowing why, he still hoped to find a dry corner, a friendly face, or just someone to look him in the eye. But at every corner, another shut gate, another awning already claimed. So far, nobody had noticed the boy. And at that moment, the only things he had were hunger, rain, cold, and the necklace clutched tight, as if holding on to his last scrap of strength not to give up. The rain wouldn't let up. Sometimes it seemed like it fell only on him. The drops were ice cold, running in through the fraying collar of his shirt, sliding down his back and mixing with the cold sweat of fear. His sneakers were long gone. Now it was just bare feet on the asphalt, hopping from puddle to puddle, feeling the icy water creep up to his knees. But what hurt most was still his stomach, growling nonstop, begging for anything, a forgotten crust, any stray scrap someone left behind. Gabriel moved slowly down the shining, rain-soaked street. He tried to shield the almost golden necklace with both hands, huddled beneath his shirt, the only real gift his mother had given him, before she closed her eyes forever. Nothing could make him let go. He slept with it in his fist. Now, with chilled fingers, he wanted to hide it from the street, and from those who robbed kids like him. Tonight, the wind plastered his hair to his face, and every blast of a car horn was louder, echoing in the emptiness around him. The city sounded noisy, but in his loneliness all Gabriel registered was his own breathing. He walked with nowhere to go, just trying to outrun the cold, teeth chattering, looking for any spot to wait out the rain. That's when he saw the restaurant's awning. Bright lights, spotless, a dark rug at the door, and the revolving door gleaming. Just looking gave him a sense of warmth. He dodged a skinny dog scurrying past and approached slowly, afraid a security guard would scold him or someone would shout that this wasn't a place for boys like him. He stopped under the awning, trying to hide his dirty face. Not that anyone was paying attention anyway, only when he was in a group. Sometimes rich people passed by, talking loud, laughing, passing comment on the weather, and steered away from Gabriel as if he were contagious, something dangerous. Inside, beyond the glass, was another world. Gabriel pressed his face against the bottom of the window, where nobody usually looked. First, he smelled it. Hot food, roasted meat, fries, chicken, rice. The scent of a clean kitchen, nothing like the food in shelters, which always smelled more of sadness than of dinner. Dessert perfume hovered in the air too, mixed with that aroma that invades just for a second and is gone. His eyes widened, locked in place. He saw tables covered in neatly folded napkins, beautiful cutlery, glasses sparkling in the golden light of the elegant dining room. Everyone was laughing, chewing slowly, talking with their mouths full. Gabriel noticed a little girl sitting on her father's lap. She laughed so hard she coughed with joy, and her father wiped her mouth with a white napkin, kissing her hair. That was rare. He'd only seen it in movies. For a moment, Gabriel forgot about the rain, forgot about himself, just stayed there, gazing and dreaming of a warm lap, that touch he could barely remember. The window fogged up where he exhaled. He wiped the glass with his sleeve, quietly. He wanted to see more. He imagined what it would be like to eat there, sitting down, not having to rush, able to choose. Imagined his mother there too, maybe sitting across from him, smiling, filling his plate with food. Just closing his eyes, he could almost smell her, a mix of her scent and the restaurant's perfume. His stomach grumbled loudly, jolting him out of his daydream. Gabriel gripped the necklace under his shirt, almost crushing it. He looked up at the dark sky, swallowed hard. He didn't know if what he felt more keenly was hunger or missing someone. Luxury cars stopped outside, one after another. The valet opened doors, straightening his jacket. Sophisticated people stepped out, always busy, eyes on their phones. They passed within inches, not seeing him. Some laughed into their phones, others argued with their wives. None looked his way. Gabriel could smell them, expensive cologne over the taxi driver's cigarette. He wanted to say good evening, but the words stuck, afraid they'd say get lost. Standing there, his toes numb, he felt a hand brush against him. It was security, just passing to check. Didn't say a word, but Gabriel understood, shrinking back, trying even harder to be invisible against the glass. Inside, at some point, Gabriel noticed a man sitting alone at a table by the big window. A serious face, well-groomed beard, hair too carefully styled for this hour. He didn't seem happy or sad, just distant. He cut his meat slowly, glanced at his phone sometimes, sighed. It was as if the buzz and noise of the restaurant never reached his table. Gabriel found it strange and kept watching without realizing. For a moment, he wondered, does that man know what it's like to be hungry? Has anyone ever wiped his mouth with care? Does he miss anyone? For a second, Gabriel thought no one could be as lonely as him, but the man's expression betrayed something. A weight in the way he blinked, a silent depth behind the noise. You could almost hear his weariness. The rain grew harder, beating on the awning. The wind flicked icy droplets his way, but Gabriel didn't budge. He stood right there, caught between two worlds, the one inside, full of warmth and good smells, and the one outside, like him, harsh, wet, forgotten. He stood there, eyes closed for a few seconds, trying to hold on to that smell of food, that picture of the father and daughter, that warmth that never quite reached him. He squeezed the necklace inside his shirt as if it were his mother holding his hand. And in that moment, he knew he couldn't take it anymore. No matter how embarrassed, no matter how scared of being turned away, he'd try, just this once. He took a deep breath, let the cold in a little more, ran his hand through his wet hair, and decided he had to ask. Maybe tonight, someone would really see him. Maybe, for once, he wouldn't be ignored. The restaurant's door was still foggy on the inside. Gabriel felt the cold glass on his forehead as he pressed closer to look inside. The light in there was blinding. The scent of hot food seemed to mock him, wafting in, making his stomach ache even more, a sweet, greasy aroma, dessert and meat all at once. He stood still, his heart racing at just the thought of going inside. For a split second, he thought of turning back, to the alley, the rain, the shadows where nobody noticed. But thunder rumbled in the distance and he shivered. His legs were numb from cold. He looked down at the chain he kept hidden under his soaked sweatshirt, ran his thumb over the battered pendant, the last bit of his good life. He sighed. He couldn't stand it anymore. He needed food, even if it was just stale bread or a bone. He pushed the door slowly, making it creak. Felt all the eyes burning on his back right away. Inside was a different world. Red carpet, gleaming walls, elegant people speaking softly, everything scented with expensive perfume. No one wore torn clothes there. No one had ever felt hungry. The first person he saw was a waiter, starched apron and all. The man looked him up and down, wrinkling his nose, like he'd found a wet dog in the parlor. No one said anything. Silence was broken only by the clink of a glass on the table, a woman startled by the boy's presence. Gabriel stood still, nervous hands searching for courage inside his coat, but finding none. The waiter stepped forward, tipping his head toward the door, not even asking what Gabriel wanted. Gabriel bit his lips, no strength left for pride. He lowered his head, stared at his feet, and said softly, almost voiceless, "Mister, is there any extra food? I'm hungry." No one answered for a moment. Just an uncomfortable silence, growing heavier, as if someone had pressed the air down. In the background, you could hear cutlery scraping plates, the entire room stifling conversation to pretend they hadn't seen anything. Except everyone was watching. A stern lady, hair carefully styled, huffed loud. "This is outrageous. Isn't there any police?" Another man in a suit and thick ring pulled his jacket away so it wouldn't touch the boy, as if he were contagious. Security was already on their way, two big men in black. The waiter signaled them, a quick nod. Gabriel braced himself to be tossed out. But still he didn't move. He glanced toward the counter, saw a plate of leftover rice being taken away. His mouth watered. In the end, the only one who seemed to actually hear the plea was the man sitting alone by the big window, Enrique. Tall, hair brown streaked with gray, sharp, almost stern eyes. Fine shirt, but his hand clenched tight on the tablecloth, and from across the room, you could catch something uneasy in his stare. At first, Enrique didn't say a word. He just looked at the boy. It wasn't pity, not exactly, more a mix of anger, surprise, maybe even shame. As if Gabriel's pain had ruined his evening. He stared, in a way that made the boy's stomach knot tighter. Gabriel felt like apologizing just for existing, but all he could do was stare at the floor. The floor was cream-colored, shining like a mirror. One of the guards put a hand on his shoulder, gripping softly but firmly. Enrique took a deep breath. He set his silverware down, making them clink against the plate. His jaw tightened, a vein throbbing on his neck. He wasn't happy. He didn't speak but traded a look with the manager. Cold, like, handle this. Two guests muttered in annoyance, refusing to look directly at the boy. A woman turned to the window, pretending the rain was falling for her alone. But for Gabriel, everything else faded. All he heard was his own heartbeat, in time with the pounding rain outside. His icy fingers trembled again. He didn't know if it was nerves or just the cold. He pulled his coat up, trying to cover the necklace. Only then did Enrique move again, leaning forward, locking eyes with the boy. He looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't. With no choice left, Gabriel pleaded again, whisper quiet, almost begging. "Please, sir, just one plate." There was so much shame in the request, even he could taste it. It wasn't just about food. It was about existing in that place. About being the flaw in their perfect picture. The manager flicked a glance at the guards. They tightened their grip on Gabriel's shoulder. Someone at a neighboring table muttered, "These kids should be in a shelter." No one stood to help. The waiter looked away, too embarrassed to say a word. Enrique stared at his plate, breathing harder. He closed his eyes for a second, as if trying to wake from a nightmare. Then he looked up at Gabriel, his eyes cold, but now with something different in them, a thread of doubt, maybe even fear. For a split second, the air in the restaurant thickened. Everyone waited for his final word. Gabriel just wanted to disappear. But he stood his ground, ready to be thrown back out into the rain. The cold outside was calling, but now his heart burned in a new way. It wasn't just hunger. It was shame. It was the pain of being seen that way. And before he was pushed out, he reflexively put his hand to his chest, protecting the pendant. The metal was cold, but it brought a soft warmth, like a mother's hand. It was everything he had left. The restaurant smelled of meat and perfume, but for Gabriel, fear and sadness had the strongest scent right now. While Enrique sat breathing heavily, hating this discomfort, perhaps even hating himself. Their story was just beginning, but neither of them had any idea how much that simple plea would ache on both sides of the door. The sound of the rain pounding the street outside drowned out every other sound. The steamed-up restaurant window made the contrast clear. Inside, warm light, good food, shining dishes. Outside, everything cold, dark, and wet. Gabriel stood there, small beneath the porch light, arms crossed tight against the cold. Hair stuck to his forehead, cheeks red, lips blue. He clutched the necklace with a closed fist, as if it held a precious secret. Enrique watched everything from his table, tense, his fingers gripping his cutlery unconsciously. A look of annoyance on his face, like he was thinking, "Why here? Why tonight?" He tried to ignore it, but the murmurs grew louder. A couple scowled. A woman whispered something to the waiter. The heavy atmosphere crept into the room. The manager traded looks with Enrique, as if asking, "Would you like me to handle this?" Enrique said nothing, just made a quick, impatient gesture with his hand, as if to say, "Take out the trash." The guard understood at once, walking right across the dining room, not masking his disdain. He stopped next to Gabriel, kneeling only enough to get eye level. You could tell from his face he'd done this before. He took Gabriel's arm, not roughly but firmly. The boy's eyes widened, startled. He tried to pull away, but he was tired, weak. The crowd of well-dressed people, linen napkins, wine glasses, watched as if it were a trivial scene. No one spoke, but their stares were loud, some with pity, others with impatience. They wanted him gone. Gabriel lowered his head, hair dripping over his necklace. The guard squeezed his arm, pulling him out under the awning, back into the bite of the wind. The boy tried to defend himself as best he could, curling up as if he could vanish on the spot. Enrique watched with a hard expression, not moving a muscle. Yet inside, he felt a strange discomfort, a twinge in his chest, a mix of guilt and anger, quickly locked away. Not my problem. I can't help everyone, he thought, trying to focus on his cooling meal, but his appetite was gone. The automatic door slid shut, sealing out not just the wind, but all of the boy's pain. Gabriel drew a deep breath, clutching the necklace harder, a dull strand of gold, worn thin with time, holding a small simple pendant that, to him, was worth the world. He clenched his jaw, determined not to cry. He gathered his courage and took one last look inside. And that's when his eyes met Enrique's, the two separated by nothing but glass and a world of differences. Gabriel froze for a moment. The rain faded into the background, as if everything was on pause. His eyes, huge, scared but steadfast, looked for a response, a word, anything different from what he always got. Enrique stared back, just for a fraction of a second, his gaze empty. But then the ceiling lights caught on the necklace, the pendant glinting so brightly it drew every eye. Only gold, but that flash cut through the chill of the room. It reflected straight onto Enrique's face, and he couldn't look away no matter how hard he tried. Gabriel noticed the lingering look, felt a new fear in his gut, without understanding why. The guard was already nudging him on, but Gabriel stood his ground, holding the gaze, as if wishing to understand why. Among so many indifferent people, it was this one man who was so unsettled by a simple necklace. People began murmuring again. The curtain drew shut. The tension remained. Enrique finally blinked, looked away from the boy, but he already felt changed. His hand trembled. His heart thudded, half furious, half afraid. He tried to convince himself again. It's just a coincidence. It can't be. Gabriel let himself be led away by the guard. The rain lashed down, soaking him again from head to battered shoes. He took one last glance back, lost in doubt. Would anyone ever really see him? The necklace swung on his chest, half hidden by his old sweatshirt. The night grew darker, the wind harsher, and luxury cars kept pulling in. Enrique downed his wine in one gulp, the taste bitterer than ever, every drop heavy in his mouth. He didn't look back at the door, but the boy's image wouldn't leave him. The light, the pendant, the frightened face. Enrique tried to ask the waiter for something, but his voice cracked. In his head, he could still hear Gabriel's nervous voice pleading for food. Try as he might, he couldn't tamp it down. The echo of that necklace shimmered at the back of his mind. For a second, everything went silent for Enrique, right there in the crowded restaurant. The tinkle of cutlery, the muffled voices, everything lost color. Just for a moment, but he felt it. The pendant swung there, shining on the thin neck of the boy, almost hidden behind his soaked clothes. Enrique didn't get moved easily anymore, not for a long time. He'd learned to lock things away, to stash his feelings out of sight, forget the past. But that flash, it wasn't a store-bought necklace. It wasn't anything ordinary. It looked just like the one he bought years before, in a little shop that smelled of wood and old trinkets. The memory blindsided Henrik. Suddenly, he was with Sophia again, watching her laugh, fixing her hair in the mirror, that shy smile before turning to show off her new necklace. The years made the memory ache. Sophia, her name echoed in his mind, like rain drumming against glass. Outside the glass door, Gabriel was hunched, holding tight to his necklace. The boy had no idea. He just wanted to run, couldn't make sense of the unrest inside, or the reason he drew such nasty looks. But in his expression was a heavy weariness, too much weight for so few years. Enrique watched, couldn't look away. He saw Gabriel's big, scared eyes and in them an unspoken question, why? And in that fleeting encounter, Enrique saw past the dirt on his face, past the fear the boy tried to hide. The pendant glowed again, yellow in the restaurant's white light. Everything inside Enrique twisted. He felt as if the floor had been snatched out from under him. A knot rose in his throat. He wanted to speak, ask how the boy had that necklace. Wanted to know if it was a coincidence or if life, by some wild twist of fate, was returning him a scrap of lost youth. The guard was already tugging Gabriel by the arm, impatient, nearly dragging him. Enrique watched from a distance, a table between them, and for a moment, felt a sharp pang of anger. Not at the boy, but at himself, at the life he'd led, so disconnected, so dry, so blind to what really mattered. But he hesitates. It's as if his body doesn't know what to do. He just sits there, hands sweating, brow furrowed, unable to look away from the boy. Even the food on his plate seems to lose its flavor. It's a strange feeling, fear, guilt, and a tiny flicker of hope, small as a spark. In his mind, he remembers Sophia crying, hiding her face, saying she was leaving. No one ever really explained why, just left an emptiness, the pendant, and now it's back, hanging around the neck of a lonely child, huddled against the rain. Outside, the cold gets worse. The door opens, a gust of icy air sweeps through the restaurant. Customers complain, people button up their coats, glare with annoyance. But Enrique doesn't even hear them anymore. He can only think about the golden medal. Maybe it's stupid to care so much about an object, but it's a piece of his life he never thought he'd see again. And it isn't just the necklace, it's everything that comes bundled with it. Youth, choices, guilt, and longing. The waiter asks if everything's all right. Enrique just nods silently. He can't really think straight. The name Sophia starts pounding in his head. Could it be? No, it can't be. But what if it is? What if that boy is connected to her, to their past, and all the hurt left behind? Gabriel, on the other side of the door, glances back one last time before the security usher him out. His eyes meet Enrique's. In that moment, Enrique feels naked, exposed. He feels like getting up, running after the boy, and asking, "Where did you get that necklace? Who was your mother? How did you end up out here, so alone?" But Enrique's hand shakes. He's never been brave when it comes to matters of the heart. All his life, he's relied on his head, kept his cool, followed the rules. This time it's different, because Gabriel's silence cuts right through him, like a knife. Not knowing is worse than any truth. The street outside is cold. Almost no one is around. The rain is starting to pool in black puddles on the sidewalk. Gabriel steps carefully, the hole in his shoe now flooding with water. He rolls the pendant between his fingers as if stroking it, as if that tiny golden circle were his shield against the world. Enrique still doesn't move, but inside he's shaken. He almost gets up, then changes his mind. The pain on the boy's face sticks with him. Compassion is one thing. It's another to feel your own story tangled up in the drama of someone you've just seen, and yet feel like you've known forever. Enrique pulls the napkin from his lap, slowly sets his fork on the plate. The food grows cold, but he doesn't care. He keeps staring out the window at that small figure walking away, carrying with him a question from 30 years ago. And to an outside observer, it's nothing, just a wealthy man watching a poor kid leave. Only Enrique feels it, truly feels it, as if that pendant's shine had cracked open a locked door inside him, letting in everything trapped there: guilt, longing, the faintest glimmer of hope. Because there's a story there. Old ties, secrets, and maybe one more shot at changing everything. When the door closes again and silence falls, Enrique knows he won't be able to ignore this. The world outside is still wet, hard, and different. But for him, nothing will ever be the same after seeing that pendant glinting in the rain. A thunderclap splits the sky, the kind that rattles the glass and makes your chest feel the sound. Inside the restaurant, everyone jumps. But outside, in the soaked and darkened street, there's only the noise of car horns mixed with merciless pounding rain. And Gabriel, out there, escaping without looking back. He nearly trips descending the slick stairs. His shoes lost its sole, water leaking straight through to his feet. The cold hits hard, slicing through his face, but fear is so much bigger he barely registers it. He just wants to get out of there, disappear. He feels the pendant striking his chest and squeezes it tight, the only thing left that is truly his. The only warmth he has. The guards yell something, but Gabriel doesn't hear. He just runs. Only 8 years old, but the streets have already taught him when to run. He knows the alleys, the holes, cars stopping wherever. His heart pounds so hard it threatens to burst through his chest. Inside the restaurant, Enrique stands motionless for a few seconds. His hand still shakes around a glass of expensive wine, not believing what he saw. The pendant. Sophia. His chest tightens in a way money could never fix. A flash of an old face, that unforgettable smile. And now, on the neck of a skinny boy in the storm. Enrique throws down the napkin, abandons the meal that tastes like nothing. The fancy restaurant can keep the party going without him for a while. He swings the door open, cold wind slapping his face. The street smells garbage, gasoline, fried food, and the endless pounding of rain on asphalt. Kid, wait. Enrique yells, but it's too late. The boy is already vanishing between parked cars. For a moment, Enrique considers going back inside, calling someone, anything. But something pulls him forward. That need to fix something old, a wound left open for years. There, among sleek cars and the wary stares of the doormen, he runs. His expensive suit weighs him down, soaking through with every step, water running inside his collar. He trips on a step, swears under his breath. The ground is slick, reflecting headlights, window lights, flashing neon signs. But all he sees is the end of the street, searching for even a shadow of Gabriel, now disappearing fast. The boy's already turned the corner, heading into the dark. His arm wraps around himself, trying to protect the necklace, as if it's a secret, as if it's gold. And to him, it is. Rain plasters wispy hair to his forehead, runs into his eyes, mixing with sweat. His hand trembles, teeth chatter. And the fear, always the fear, grows when he senses someone following. He glances back, sees that big man, well-dressed, running into the street, and that's even more terrifying. An adult chasing a child in the street is never a good sign. Gabriel tries to pick up the pace, but his body aches. The soles of his feet throb each time they strike the hard sidewalk. His stomach growls, and sobs rise up, anger and exhaustion tangled together, lost in the rain, with no one to see. Enrique starts to lose his breath. He's not used to this, running through cold city streets. But he feels a kind of urgency he can't explain. In his mind, one word: Sophia. And that old pendant, made like a promise. Traffic drifts by on the other side, impatient horns, people huddled under awnings, observing the improbable scene from afar, a well-dressed man chasing a dirty street boy, each tangled in his own thoughts. Enrique shouts again, "Please. Kid. Wait. I just want to talk." But Gabriel only hears echoes, as if everything's turning into a bad dream, a nightmare. Fear pushes him on. He finds a darker street, spots an alley where no one's looking. It's damp, crowded with trash bags. Rats scurry here and there. He doesn't want to go in, but it's better than a big man chasing him. Enrique arrives at the mouth of the alley, stops suddenly. He listens, just the relentless rain pounding on tarps over makeshift shacks. He calls out softly now, voice trembling with a name buried in his chest. "Sophia." It sounds strange after all these years, but it hovers in his voice, a plea. The alley replies only with silence and the smell of wet decay. Inside, Gabriel curls up tighter, body clenched. He presses his forehead to his knee, clutching the cold pendant in his fingers, whispering prayers that no one finds him there. And in that moment, Enrique stands in the middle of the downpour, staring into empty darkness, trying to understand how an encounter like this could change a life forever. The rain seems to fall harder, washing everything except the anguish each carries. And in the streets, only thunder drowns out the crying of the boy no one sees, and the sigh of a man who, for the first time in years, misses a life that might still exist. Gabriel runs until he can't feel his legs. He doesn't look back, just feels the rain beating down, sticking his thin shirt to his back, streaming down his face in mingled tears and icy water. The noise of the restaurant fades behind him, turning into just a memory. Now, all that's left is the sound of his own choked crying, tangled with ragged breath and distant thunder cutting through the heavy sky. The boy slips through a fence, crosses a sidewalk full of puddles, and slips into a pitch-black alley. It's a forgotten street, where even the broken lamp post can't shine the way. The smell here is different, a mix of garbage, wet cardboard, rotting food, and rats you can hear scurrying nearby. There's no one to help. He finds a spot behind some discarded fruit crates. Sits on the ground, trembling. The cold hurts to the bone, his hands barely move. He stares at his necklace, clings to it as if it could save him from the world. The pendant only glints when the lightning flashes, and even then, Gabriel quickly tucks it under his shirt. It's not just an object, it's all that's left of his mother, and thinking of her makes him want to scream from the pain, but he just shuts his eyes and tries to hold back the sob. Gabriel thinks about what just happened. That elegant man, with neat hair, expensive suit, grim face behind the restaurant window. The way he looked at him was strange. It wasn't just anger or disdain, it was real shock. Would he have tried to hurt him? Or wanted to steal the necklace? Gabriel doesn't understand the reason behind that man's desperate look, his eyes glued to the pendant. For a moment, he almost thought the man might cry. But trust isn't an option. He's seen worse on these streets. Every adult who comes close takes something. Someone's tried to yank off the necklace once, nearly succeeded. Ever since, he's slept on his stomach, arms crossed over his chest, protecting the last piece of his mother. It's the same now. He hugs the pendant, squeezes hard enough to hurt. Rats rustle behind the trash. A car rolls past the alley entrance, headlights briefly lighting up the gloom, but no one stops. The few people passing through shout, gesture, never noticing the boy huddled beneath the crates. Gabriel stays still, barely breathing. He knows if he makes any noise, the wrong kind of people will find notice. His stomach growls. It really hurts. It's not just hunger, it's an emptiness that never goes away. 2 days now without a decent meal. That's normal. Sometimes he can find a stale roll, but not tonight. The smell of the restaurant comes back. Huge plates, juicy meat, fluffy rice, hot soup. He licks his lips, feels his dry throat. The fear is greater than the hunger. Gabriel thinks, what if that man comes back? What if he sends more guards? He's been beaten by grown men before, knows how it hurts. He's also run from the police, who hit first and never ask names, tell you to disappear as if you're not real. The pendant weighs on his chest, but he'll never let it go. He closes his fist around it, the sharp edge biting into his finger. Sometimes he feels his mother close by, as if she's holding his hand in the cold. He looks up at the sky, just gray, heavy rain hitting his forehead. He can't feel his feet anymore, stiff from wet. His socks, if you can call them that, useless against the chill. Tucks his chin between his knees, trying to hide from the wind. He imagines his mother singing softly, as she did to scare away thunder. So he just stays there, half awake, half asleep. Eyes open, listening for footsteps, but his head starts spinning with exhaustion. A skinny dog barks in the distance. Someone stumbles by, mumbling in a scratchy, slurred voice. Gabriel shoves himself deeper into the crates, hardly breathing. His legs go numb. He tries to remember how it was before, when he lived with his mother, had a house, the smell of morning coffee, tight hugs. It all feels far away. He wants to cry, but the sound of his own voice would be asking to be found. He lets the tears fall, mixing with rain. He whispers, hardly audible, "Mom, stay with me?" Every glimmer of hope vanishes quickly. He thinks of the elegant man again. The way he stared. Did he know his mother? Was it a mistake? Gabriel doesn't want hope. He knows nothing good comes from that. He's already learned. He waits for morning to come. The fear doesn't leave, but hunger and exhaustion turn everything gray. The pendant is the warmth he has left. Between lightning flashes, Gabriel looks up at the sky. Just one more night. Tomorrow I'll try again. He forces himself to believe that, come morning, he'll find bread, or a smile, or somewhere less hostile to hide. The only thing he's sure of is that no one will take what's his, not as long as he can defend it. He gathers all his love into his closed fist, hugs his skinny body, and waits for something he isn't sure exists, someone to hear, someone to see, even in a dark alley, in a world that seems to have forgotten boys like Gabriel. Enrique can hardly feel his body when he gets in the car. Rain hammers the windshield, that sound people say is relaxing. Today, it feels like punishment. Water trickles down the collar of his expensive blazer, hair slick and heavy. But nothing bothers him as much as the image of that boy in his head, shirt clinging to his chest with rain, eyes full of fear, and that necklace. He sinks into the leather seat, rubs his face, tries to breathe. The driver glances at him in the mirror, waiting for a direction, but he says nothing. Fiddles with the dials, turns on the heater, grips the armrest like he's trying to wake up from a nightmare. The pendant, the simple design, gold-worn thin, swinging from a lost boy's neck. For Enrique, it's not just gold. It's a wedge of the past, an echo from an interrupted story. He recalls Sophia's smile, the way she'd play with it like a talisman. So much left behind from those days, so many details lost to the grind of work, meetings, money. But that present, he never forgot. It belonged to another life. In his glove box, he still keeps old letters, yellowed newspaper clippings. Out of habit more than sentimentality. But tonight, something different tightens his chest. He doesn't know if it's longing, fear, or guilt buried beneath this expensive coat. Sophia's name brushes his thoughts, soft as a whisper. How long since he truly thought of her? The quiet in the car weighs heavier than the rain outside. He leans his head on the cold window, watching the outside drops zigzag down. Ahead, the street is a blur of headlights, distant horns, faceless people on their way home, running from the cold. He remembers losing track of Sophia. There was a company party, she was quieter than usual. Then she vanished. Not long after, the letter. Words he never understood. I need to follow my own path, forgive me, never doubt my love. Only doubt remained, gnawing at him, but he carried on. Tucked away his pain. Pretended he didn't miss her. Over time, it all became routine. Business, contracts, cold dinners and fancy restaurants, where everything sparkled and no one looked each other in the eye. But now, sitting alone, inhaling the scent of rain and leather, it's as if all that armor has cracked. How can a skinny, dirty, rain-soaked little boy bring all that back just by showing a necklace? Enrique rubs his face, so tired. He tries to recall the last time he looked at anyone with his heart open. He can't remember. These days it's all suits, loud voices, people pretending not to feel cold. He looks at his hands, and they're trembling a little. He can't shake the image of the boy. Gabriel's look was something he'd never received before. It was fear, hunger, and a question hanging in his eyes. Why? Enrique remembers the restaurant door, the people complaining and turning away. Even he had asked security to get rid of the boy, as if he were a minor nuisance. Now, the emptiness inside feels even worse. What had he done? What if that boy isn't just another lost face in the crowd? What if he's something more? The driver asks, Mr. Enrique, where to now? But the businessman doesn't answer. He opens the glove box, rummages among receipts and old papers, fingers landing on a small box. The old box of Sophia's letters. He doesn't read any. Just presses the lid, his heart pounding like he's a boy again. He decides he won't leave. Not this time. The very thought makes him tremble. What if the boy is connected to her? The pendant doesn't lie. It's exactly the same, even down to the tiny defect on the side, which only he and Sophia knew about. That can't be a coincidence. What if all these years of thinking about her were for nothing? What if there'd been a child? The thought hurts. But not knowing is worse. Deep down, Enrique feels an old fear. The fear of looking foolish, of getting attached again, of diving into the dark hole of the past. He's always run from that. Always preferred control, numbers, concrete. But now he sees he controls nothing after all. Sitting alone in that warm car, listening to the dull roar of rain, he wants to cry, but swallows it down. It's as if the rain is falling inside, too. He needs to act, though he doesn't know how. He decides he'll find out who that boy is. He'll search, even if it means turning over every alley in the city. Whoever Gabriel is, he won't ignore the pain again. Not Gabriel's, nor his own. The driver starts to go, but Enrique tells him to stop at the next corner. He gets out with no destination, lets the cold wind sting his face, feels the raindrops slap his hands. He closes his coat, surveys the street full of puddles and smells of wet city. 1, 2 people race by. No one looks. Everyone's running from their own pasts. He's always run, too. But not tonight. The longing, guilt, and that thrumming doubt in his chest propel Enrique forward on stiff legs, trying not to think of everything he's let slip away. All he wants is a chance to understand what happened, to look that boy in the eyes without fear, to find answers before it's too late. In the end, he's just another man, trembling in the rain, trying to figure out where he first lost his way. Gabriel stayed in the alley until all the noise from the street had faded, until there was only the water dripping from the gutters, each drop falling heavy onto a piece of soaked cardboard. He tried to settle on the hard ground, tugged another ripped scrap to cover his legs, but the cold cut right through. The wind slipped in at every crack and chilled him to the bone, right into his guts. His stomach had stopped growling. When it gets like this, empty for so long, it doesn't even make noise anymore. There's just a tightness, a constant pain like an open hole inside him. Gabriel tucked his chin to his chest, stared at the necklace in his hand, squeezed the pendant with fingers turned purple from the cold. It was the only warmth left, a memory of his mother. "It'll pass, son, just close your eyes," she'd say. But here, time never passes. In the alley, there's nothing but silence, maybe a couple of cars in the distance or someone's teeth chattering in the darkness. Gabriel doesn't cry anymore. If you cry, someone will see, someone will hear, someone will take advantage. They always told him, a child's cry calls monsters. He was drifting off to sleep when he felt a strange new weight on his chest. 2, 3 slow steps, the rattle of a can being dragged. He heard a laugh, the kind that hurts your ears because it's grown-ups pretending to be friendly. He faked sleep. Didn't breathe too loud, didn't move. "Hey, kid, you alone out here?" The voice was rough, full of false concern, and smelled dirty, of booze and cigarettes. Other faces appeared behind. One crouched, got right in his face, sour breath, squinty, lifeless eyes. Gabriel clutched his necklace even tighter, slid into the corner, tried to melt into the wall. "Get up, now," the man ordered. He yanked Gabriel's arm, too hard, the kind that leaves bruises. "Let go of me," Gabriel whispered, but it was more fear than bravery. He felt the hot, sweaty grip, rough fingers, grimy fingernails. The other man laughed. "Leave it, Zay. He's small, but he'll bring in some coins today. If he runs, snatch his necklace." No one ever touches the necklace. Ever. Gabriel kicked the man in the shin, managed to break free. Panicked, he dashed off barefoot, only feeling the cold ground, trash, shards of glass slicing his foot. He slipped, nearly fell, never looked back. Just kept running, heart pounding his chest. Through puddles, through scraps of food, through rats. Every step was fear. If they catch you, you disappear. He knows about friends who vanished, never came back. He knows about the girl who cut her hair and never spoke to anyone again. There are too many bad people on the street, and the good ones are always out of reach. "Grab that brat," one of them yelled, but lost Gabriel at the corner. He hid behind a big dumpster, hugged his knees, face buried. His whole body was shaking, breath trapped. Cold sweat mixed with rain. His eyes searched the broken pavement for something to eat, anything. But there was only a piece of gum stuck to a rock. And who chews gum in the cold? Further away, he heard their footsteps fade. But he knew they're never really gone. They always come back. And that rainy night, while the rest of the city huddled behind glowing yellow windows, Gabriel felt like he was made of wind and fear. He tried to distract himself by staring at his own hands. Remembered his mother's hands, slender fingers, always clean nails, the smell of cheap hand cream. It was nothing like how he felt now, dirty, every piece of clothing soaked and glued to his skin. Deep down, his heart was asking, "Does anyone still wait for me? Is this fear ever going to end?" The necklace spun on its gold chain. "Don't ever lose it, my boy." Never. He obeyed. It was the only order he could keep. Time barely moved. He counted posts, counted cars, listened to the voices in the alley, a couple laughing, a dog barking somewhere, people arguing at the bar, some other kid crying in some corner. He wasn't the only one hurting. His stomach felt like a block of ice. Every time it rained, the cold got worse. It was like he didn't have skin left to keep out the chill. With his torn clothes, even the slightest gust smacked like a slap. Even his teeth ached. Hunger made his entire body complain. Suddenly, headlights swept across the start of the alley, lighting everything up. Gabriel curled in tighter. He didn't want to be seen. A car in this place, at night, never meant anything good. But it sped away again. The darkness returned. And in that darkness, the boy thought, tomorrow will be the same, or worse. But I have to keep going. Sometimes he'd sleep a few minutes, startle awake. In short dreams, he'd see his mother's smiling face, softly calling, "Wake up, my boy." But waking in that place only meant more pain. No hugs, no hot coffee, nothing. Just the necklace. Just her name engraved on the back. Just the certainty that even sad and alone, he had to fight. That's how it was every night, fear thumping louder than the rain. A kid's heart learning to be tough, even though it's still a child's heart. And hope, the quiet, stubborn kind, pushed him onward, even with no promise of a happy ending. He stayed there until the sky began to lighten a little, the chill blue of another day about to be born. And he wondered if this fight would ever end, if anyone would really, truly see him. Because so far, everyone only saw a street kid, never Gabriel, the boy with the golden pendant from his mom. Enrique doesn't even feel the cold as he leaves the restaurant. He's walking fast, face tense, suit soaked with rain. The umbrella was left behind. He probably didn't even remember it. The boy's name, Gabriel, pounds in his mind, but it's the shine of that necklace, identical to the one he gave Sophia all those years ago, that won't let him rest. Something inside him refuses to let go, a mix of fear and guilt, a squeeze in his chest that makes it hard to breathe. He calls for his driver, asks for the car. In truth, he can barely speak. His voice comes out raw, trembling. He asks to drive slowly around the neighborhood, eyes watchful at every corner, every empty square. The car window fogs up, but Enrique doesn't notice. He keeps lowering it to see better. Each time they pass a child in the street, he looks hard, at faces, at clothes, searching for that image of Gabriel, hair stuck to his forehead, that frightened gaze. Passing under a viaduct, he sees a host of people lying under cardboard boxes, covered with plastic, trying to keep out the chill that never stops falling. Enrique never really noticed all this before. He feels something strange, almost like shame, as if witnessing it all for the very first time. Call the hospitals, ask if any boys, about 8 years old, have come in, maybe injured, maybe alone. The woman on the other end sounds impatient, like he's just another number. "We've had 3 like that just today," she says. With every call, he hears more of this reality he's always ignored. Shelters, the police, nothing. Some places don't even want to talk. Others ask for a name, a last name, some paperwork, but almost no one knows anything about Gabriel. The dashboard clock flashes. It's nearly 3 in the morning. He has deep circles under his eyes, his fingers shaking from gripping the phone so tightly. He calls one of the restaurant security guards, asks if he saw the boy heading off anywhere. The guy, sounding hesitant, says, there are lots of kids like him around, but Enrique pushes. Promises money, just wants a clue, anything at all. It's weird, he's always been the man in control, the man with the money, the fixer. But now, it's all useless. Money won't make Gabriel show up. And that brings a panic, a kind of rage at himself. He grabs a jacket from the back seat, slips it over his suit, but it doesn't warm him. Nothing warms him on the inside. The driver suggests they go home, but Enrique tells him to keep driving. He tries to summon up every detail of the boy's face. The way he clutched that necklace, like it was something sacred. Cold slices through the city. Enrique sees his own reflection in the window, looking older. For maybe the first time in years, he feels like just an ordinary man, powerless in the face of life. He thinks of Sophia, of what could have happened to her, and real fear creeps in. What if this kid really is his son? What if he disappears forever, and Enrique never gets the chance to know the truth? On the car radio, some random news story flickers by, no one's listening. Outside, it's all silence, broken only by the hiss of water on the streets, tires moving slowly through puddles. Enrique asks the driver to pull over next to a covered bus stop. 2 boys are huddled there, wrapped in garbage bags. He gets out, his shoes sinking in the mud, and asks, "Have you seen a boy? Brown hair, skinny, wearing a necklace around his neck?" The boys eye him warily, on guard. but one of them says he saw a kid running toward the train station with some guys chasing him. Enrique offers them money, but they just want to stay away from him. He thanks them, gets back in the car, even more anxious. Now he knows Gabriel is out there, running from bad people. His stomach twists. The world outside is brutal. Nobody protects anyone. These kids are invisible to everyone. Through the rest of the night, Enrique drives around the city again. He asks the collectors, the woman selling coffee at the traffic light, a beat cop. Some look at him with pity, others just look at him strangely, a man in a suit wandering the streets at night. No leads. He thinks about giving up, but the memory of the boy's eyes comes back to him, the shine of the pendant in that small hand. The rain slows, but the wind picks up, sharp through the cracks in the window. Enrique finds himself shivering, not just from the cold, but from fear of failing, a fear he's never had before. It's not fear of losing money or a business deal. It's fear of losing someone. And there's something more he starts to see in these street kids, faces he's never noticed before. Abandonment seems more real. For a second, Enrique cracks. He doesn't cry, but his eyes burn. He remembers when he was young, the dreams he had with Sophia, the promises he made her. He feels guilt. He feels longing. He sits hunched in the car's back seat, his hand over his face, as if he can hide from the world that he's not as tough as he pretends. He thinks about everything he's ignored in life. The driver glances in the rearview mirror and asks if he's all right. Enrique just nods, unable to speak. He knows he won't sleep that night, that he won't rest until he finds Gabriel. And there, underneath that storm, surrounded by silence and emptiness, Enrique feels that, this time, he must act, not as a businessman, but as a man. As someone who can't just turn his back on a lost child, on a past that keeps coming back to find him. Dawn comes slowly. One by one, the city's lights go out. Enrique keeps searching, his voice raw, hope nearly gone. But something in him refuses to give up. He doesn't know it yet, but that night of searching, rain, and fear will change everything. And it's just the beginning. The rain gave no mercy, hammering the asphalt hard. The entire sky seemed to be crying along. Enrique didn't feel the cold anymore, nor the water running down his collar. All he could do was run, weaving between cars and puddles, his eyes searching for any small shadow against the soaked city walls. A scream sliced through the city's noise. It wasn't just someone calling, it was a cry for help, a thin voice tangled with the thunder. For a second, Enrique staggered, lost, then kept running, nearly tripping over his own feet. His hands were shaking, haunted by so many empty nights, but this was different. This time, someone depended on him. Inside, at the back of the alley, the streetlights barely shone, fading away. The walls were spattered with stains, garbage, the stench of sewage rising with a mist that made everything heavier. On the ground, Gabriel cowered, shaking. Thin arms protectively wrapped around his chest. Around him, 3 large men in dark clothes, cold eyes. You could tell from a distance they were trouble, crooked mouths, bad intentions, no feeling for anyone else's pain. Gabriel pleaded, quietly, for help. His voice almost vanished. Please, don't take it. It's all I have. He clutched in his hand, tucked against his ribs, his mother's gold pendant. It wasn't just fear. You could hear in his voice someone who no longer believes anyone will come, someone who's suffered too much. Enrique felt his heart race. It was like an arrow, piercing through every bad memory. He didn't think about money, work, or his reputation. He only thought about the boy. And he ran. Hey. His voice came out stronger than he thought. The men glanced over, at first laughing, thinking he was just some drunk or a madman. But Enrique didn't care. He stopped right there, arms wide, heart in his throat. Leave him alone. Now. One of the men yanked Gabriel by the arm. The boy's face twisted in pain. Enrique felt a wave of hot anger, the kind that only boils up in someone who's never been able to protect anyone. He charged forward without thinking, stumbling through the mud, feeling the cold water soaking his expensive shoes, not even caring that his shoulders ached every time he was shoved. The men laughed, but hesitated. No one expected a rich guy in a suit to start a fight there. They shoved back and forth, elbows coming from every direction. Enrique tried to grab Gabriel but slipped, fell to his knees, his pants ruined. But in that moment, he heard the boy crying softly, and it made Enrique stand back up with even more resolve. He gripped Gabriel by the shoulder, tried to pull him away from the men. There was a moment when everything fell quiet. Only the rain. Enrique looked into the boy's eyes. Time stopped. It didn't even seem like they were in the middle of the city, surrounded by danger. For a second, it was just the two of them. Two dark eyes, deep with fear, staring up at him, asking silently if they could trust. Enrique felt the weight of the small hand gripping his jacket. The boy pressed closer, like it was his last hope. The necklace glimmered faintly among the mud and water. It stirred something strange in Enrique, like the image blurred with old memories of Sophia laughing in the sun. Everything turned confusing. The men noticed people watching. Some street folks looked over. A few cell phones started recording. The men gave up, mumbling curses as they disappeared down the alley. Enrique barely noticed. Rain washed his face, blending with tears maybe. These days, he wasn't sure what the difference was. Carefully, he gathered Gabriel in his arms. The boy was so light it felt like holding nothing but bones and cold. He trembled, curled up, but didn't resist. He just sobbed quietly, his face buried in the man's chest. Enrique hurried them both out of the alley, covered in mud, not looking back. The stench of the alley was gone, but the fear stayed. Enrique's heart hammered, a sense that he was doing the right thing, even if he had no idea how to do it. The boy, pressed against him, clung to the necklace. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to believe it was real, that nobody would drag him away again. When they reached a sheltered sidewalk, Enrique stopped to catch his breath. His breathing was heavy, almost failing, but he didn't care. He knelt right there, forgetting about his ruined clothes. He gently pulled Gabriel to look at his face, to show him he was there, real. The boy opened his eyes slowly, afraid, but something had changed. His look was different. There was still fear, but there was hope. Just a sliver, but enough. Enrique held the boy's face in his trembling hands, tried to smile, awkward and clumsy. "I'm here, okay?" His voice was quiet, nearly drowned by the rain, but it was honest. "No one's going to hurt you anymore." Gabriel just nodded, small, resting his head on the man's chest. That awkward hug, for all its roughness, was the closest thing to love and safety he remembered. Enrique sat in silence, watching cars pass by, people running under umbrellas, everyone with their own life. There, at the end of that alley, dirty and soaked, two people life had crushed in different ways found each other. For the first time, Enrique felt maybe it really was possible to fix at least part of what had gone wrong. And Gabriel, even without understanding, felt like maybe he could believe. Enrique opened the front door and the mansion seemed bigger than ever. The foyer echoed, empty, only the wet sound of Gabriel's shoes on the shiny floor, one step at a time, wary. The boy didn't say a word. His eyes still carried pieces of the alley's panic and a lingering doubt. Was this place safe, or just a prettier kind of trap? He stood there a few seconds, taking in the staircase, the huge paintings on the wall, the chandelier burning bright. Everything was too clean, too bright. The air smelled of flowers, not the kind he was used to, but expensive, the kind of place a street kid never steps into. Enrique didn't say anything at first, either. He just took a deep breath and, for the first time, had no idea what to do in his own home. He clutched a towel in his hand, sneaking glances at Gabriel, afraid of frightening him even more. A maid came running, smiling with worry. She didn't know what was happening, but at the sight of the muddy, ragged boy she understood something was different. Enrique just quietly asked, "Please make him a hot bath. And food, please." Gabriel followed the woman, his eyes on the floor. He walked slowly, never letting go of the necklace, holding it tight as if it was a talisman. The corridors were wide, ringed with mirrors and red carpets, but at every door, he glanced sideways, afraid someone might jump out. When he reached the bathroom, he hesitated, unsure if he was really allowed in. The maid opened the door gently, showing him the rising steam from the hot water. Fresh towels folded neatly, a cotton robe, brand new slippers. Gabriel took off his shoes, felt the cold floor under his feet. He put his hand in the water, shrank back from the heat, used only to icy bucket baths on the street or from a public tap. Every so often, he looked at the door, wary, but no one came in, no one asked questions. He was just left in peace, for as long as he needed. He got into the bath slowly, closed his eyes for a moment, resting his head on the edge. The hot water crept up his body. He shivered differently, a warmth that wasn't just physical, but almost a strange relief, as if the dirt washed away wasn't just mud but pain, fear, everything he'd been through. When he came out, wrapped in the robe, he padded shyly down the hall. The maid gave him clean clothes, way too big, but smelling of soap. Gabriel put them on, feeling the soft fabric. He looked at his own hand. It was clean. The necklace, now, glittered in the yellow light of the corridor. He crept down to the kitchen. On the big table, there was bread, cheese, warm milk, every kind of fruit. The smell was good, but Gabriel just stood there for a while before sitting down. He looked at Enrique in the corner, silent, then at the food, not quite believing it. His eyes were wide, like he was waiting for someone to shout, to snatch the food away at any second. Enrique nodded, pulling out a chair for him to sit. He barely said anything else, just watched awkwardly, eyes downcast, trying to figure out how to cross the distance between them. When Gabriel finally sat down, he handled the bread delicately, like something precious, and it was, for someone who's gone without for so long. He took tiny bites, chewing in silence. He would stop, those around him, test the atmosphere. The silence was only broken by the far-off sound of rain outside, tapping on the windows. Two worlds split by glass. Outside, cold, hunger, the street. Inside, warmth, light, the good smell of food. The boy ate slowly. He would pause, watch Enrique, the maid, the door. Picked up a fruit, smelled it, nibbled just a little. He was starving, that much was clear, but wasn't sure if he should eat. In his face, you could see the fear of losing everything all over again. Nothing was familiar. Even water he sipped in tiny gulps, as if he couldn't allow himself to waste it. Enrique tried not to show it, but was clearly shaken, sitting at the end of the table, with no appetite at all. He observed every move Gabriel made, especially the way the boy fussed with the necklace, the pendant tapping softly against his chest, a living, constant reminder. Sometimes Enrique found himself breathing deep, swallowing hard, unable to meet the boy's eyes. He seemed spooked by himself, by his own feelings, by the past rushing back through the front door. The clock ticked loudly. They barely spoke at all. Gabriel looked like he was waiting for everything to be called off, for someone to say this wasn't for him, that the food wasn't for him. But no one took anything away. When he finished, he just sat clutching the cup with both hands, trying to warm his fingers. He asked for nothing, just sat, swinging his bare feet, eyes on the floor. The maid smiled and asked if he wanted dessert. Gabriel just shook his head, shy. Enrique ran a nervous hand through his hair, stood up, and mumbled, almost voiceless, "Your room's ready upstairs. If you want a rest." Gabriel looked at him, unsure if he should thank him, run away, or explain himself. He just stayed quiet, the look of someone who can't quite believe someone would do something this kind for him. On the stairs, the boy went up slowly, looking around, at each painting, each closed door. The room was all made up, a huge bed, a fluffy pillow. Gabriel touched the blanket, pressed his face into it for a second, closed his eyes, breathed in the smell of clean clothes. It felt foreign, like his body couldn't quite get used to so much comfort. Outside, the rain kept falling, a constant reminder of everything he'd left on the street. Enrique stood at the doorway, not knowing whether to go in, say something, just watching this boy who, even inside all that luxury, still shivered with fear and doubt. In the businessman's face, you could see the first hints of tears, but he held back, swallowed hard again. He only whispered, "You can sleep peacefully. You're safe. No one's going to hurt you here." Gabriel pulled the blanket up to his chin, truly feeling warm for the first time. He stared at the ceiling for a while, not blinking, almost like he was praying for it not to end. The silence was so deep, even his heartbeat seemed loud. No one spoke for several minutes. The boy closed his eyes, gripping the necklace, waiting for sleep. Outside, the rain fell hard, but inside, for the first time, it wasn't just shelter, it was hope, even if he couldn't name it yet. Enrique stood in the hall, listening to the boy's breathing grow calm. And for the first time in years, it felt like that big, cold house was a home again. That morning, silence still seemed to rule inside the big house, but it felt different. Enrique woke up early, before the staff made any noise, before even the sun tried to break through the gray clouds. He sat on the edge of his bed, rubbed his face, and let himself feel the weight of the day. A knot pressed in his chest. Was Gabriel really his son? Or was this just a foolish hope? One last chance for fate to make something right? He wandered the house slowly. He heard faint footsteps, almost silent, and saw, down at the end of the hall, Gabriel poking at a bookshelf. The boy was absorbed, staring at the tall, ancient books like he was trying to figure out where he'd landed. He still wore clean clothes, but they were much too big for his small frame. When Enrique cleared his throat softly to let him know he was there, Gabriel turned around, startled at first. But instead of fear, there was a shy smile, just at the corner of his mouth. Enrique realized how rare that was, a genuine smile from him. And for a moment, something warm flickered in his chest. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, his voice lower than he intended. Gabriel just nodded, awkwardly. He was more comfortable, but still guarded. Enrique invited the boy to have breakfast with him. They sat together, side by side, at a table far too large for just the two of them. Gabriel watched everything, touched things with his fingertips, like he was testing if it was all real. He didn't devour the food like the day before. Now he ate slowly, glancing at Enrique every so often, as if waiting for a scolding, a rule, a shock. But all he found was silence and a faint, weary smile across from him. Under his sleeve, Enrique clenched a crumpled lab slip, the DNA test order. The official envelope hadn't arrived yet, and he wasn't sure if he wanted it to come or never come at all. There was fear inside him, fear of disappointment, of fate throwing more emptiness in his face. In the late afternoon, Enrique watched Gabriel play in the garden. The rain had finally stopped, and the family dog, a tired old lab named Teo, ambled over. Gabriel crouched, first wary. Big animals always scare kids who've been beaten on the street. But Teo just wagged his tail, patient. When Gabriel stroked his fur, it was clear it was new to him. Little by little, an awkward game began. Gabriel threw a stick, Teo fetched, brought it back, and it started again. Sometimes, Gabriel even laughed. It was a quiet laugh, muffled, as if he was afraid of bothering someone. Enrique watched from the porch, saying nothing. The image burned into his mind. A boy who'd known hunger, rain, abandonment, playing for the first time. For moments, Gabriel was just a kid again. Inside, the maids whispered their doubts. Who is this kid? Why did he sleep here? Enrique heard them in the background, but for now, it didn't matter. He had too much on his mind. That evening, they watched TV together. Enrique wasn't sure what to put on. He picked an old movie, an animated film. Gabriel watched with laser focus, as if he didn't want to miss a thing. When Enrique left the living room for a bit, he was hit with a familiar nausea from all the buried emotion. If Gabriel really was his son, what then? But what if he wasn't? Enrique realized he already cared too much. In just a few days, the boy had stirred something in him that no one else had for years. Before bed, Gabriel appeared at the study door. As always, clutching the necklace between his hands. He just stood there, fidgeting, eyes restless. He didn't ask for anything, didn't say a word. He just looked up, eyes wide, full of uncertainty and hope, as if asking silently not to be left behind again. Enrique knelt down to meet his eyes. He saw up close the tiny scars on the boy's hands, the fear hiding behind his gaze. He wanted to promise him the entire world, but all he could manage was, "Everything okay, Gabriel?" The boy nodded. Enrique stood there, unsure whether to hug him, say goodnight, or just give him space. In the end, he ruffled the boy's hair, awkward, almost asking permission. At bedtime, the headlights from outside painted shadows on the bedroom ceiling. Gabriel lay on the bed, this time with the necklace on top of the covers, watching the pendant glint in the dim light. Enrique stood by the door, trying to capture every detail. The silence, the boy's gentle touch on the gold, the calm breathing after so many chaotic days. In the next room, Enrique fell asleep late. The DNA results felt like a stone on his chest, but for the first time in years, he wanted to believe in something good. A strange hope, as if fate had finally sent someone to rescue not just Gabriel, but himself. In the days that followed, the house's rhythm changed. Gabriel started sliding around in socks down the hallways, laughed to himself, whispered to Teo, learned to turn on the old radio by himself. Gradually, the emptiness in the rooms filled with voices, laughter, light footsteps. Enrique, always so stern, caught himself smiling as he watched the boy share a cookie with the dog or ask, shyly, to play loud music on the old radio. There was color, life, but above all, the invisible bond growing between two such different worlds. Deep down, Enrique knew, no matter what the lab report said, he wasn't leaving this story unchanged. That small, frightened boy had already changed everything inside him, even before the answer arrived. The envelope came on a gray morning, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Enrique woke before sunrise but tossed restlessly in bed. Every minute dragged on. When finally the doorman buzzed, he leapt from bed like someone he didn't recognize. He went down so fast, He forgot to comb his hair. The white envelope in the delivery man's hand felt heavier than lead. Enrique took it, staring at it for a second, unable to breathe, heart pounding so loud it seemed everyone must hear. He went back upstairs. The house was silent. Only the sound of wind rattling the windows and faint drips of rain trailing down the glass. Gabriel was in the living room, lying on the rug, stacking toy blocks he'd found in the basement. The dog, Boris, dozed beside him. Enrique entered quietly, gripping the envelope so tight he was afraid it might rip. He looked at Gabriel, so tiny wrapped in the huge sweatshirt, hair still tousled with sleep. The boy looked up and smiled faintly. That crooked little smile that only slipped out when he forgot, just for a second, about the streets. Enrique sat on the sofa, slowly. His hands trembled. He tried to speak, but his voice faltered. Gabriel noticed and edged closer, unsure but curious. He didn't really understand the tension, but he could tell something big was about to happen. Even Boris, the dog, woke up and nudged his nose into Enrique's legs. Enrique took a deep breath, ran a hand through his hair, and finally tore open the envelope. The papers shook in his hands. He read, word by word, his eyes falling down the page, as if his chest was full of sand, wanting to run away from the answer, wanting to know, wanting it finished. Then he stopped. There was no denying it. The words were there, cold, clinical, undeniable. The result was positive. Gabriel was his son. Enrique let the paper drop into his lap. He stared into space, dizzy. Everything around him faded, even the sound of the rain. He only felt a heat rising in his chest, something so tight, he couldn't hold it in. Suddenly he started to cry. Not a pretty, movie kind of cry. It was messy, hiccuped, face scrunched up, a hand over his mouth to keep from screaming. His shoulders shook like leaves in a storm. Gabriel's eyes widened. He stood frozen, a little scared at first, unsure if something terrible had happened. But then he saw Enrique's tears and the way he tried to hide them, holding everything inside after so long. The boy inched closer, slowly, almost like a cat creeping up in fear of being scolded. Enrique couldn't take it anymore. He opened his arms and pulled Gabriel close, nearly crushing the boy in his embrace. Gabriel let himself be swallowed up, closing his eyes. At first, his body stayed rigid, as if he couldn't quite believe it. But all it took was Enrique hugging him a little tighter, and he melted. The tension left his shoulders, his face settling against the man's chest, and, for the first time, a true sense of relief washing over him. Enrique sobbed uncontrollably. In between ragged breaths, he stroked Gabriel's hair, whispering, my son, again and again. It felt like all the love he'd kept buried inside his chest, with no one to give it to, came pouring out at once. The chill of the room vanished. The wind outside didn't matter anymore. The boy trembled from the rush of emotion. He clenched his fist in Enrique's sweatshirt, needing to be sure this was real. The old gold pendant, the same his mother wore, slipped out from under his hoodie and gleamed between the two of them. Enrique looked at the necklace, touched the pendant with his finger, feeling the warmth of the metal, heavy with history and longing. In that instant, they both understood, no words needed. Something bigger joined them together. It was love, but it was also survival, belonging. It was as if the gaping hole inside each of them, gouged out by time, loneliness, absence, finally began to close. For a while, no one spoke. Only the sound of wind and distant rain. Gabriel let a tear slip down, but it wasn't from sadness. He clung to Enrique, breathing in the scent of cologne mixed with the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. All his insecurity melted away. The fear of being abandoned again dissolved in the warmth of that hug. Enrique brushed the boy's cheek with his thumb, gently wiping away his tears. Gabriel looked up, eyes shining, barely able to believe. Enrique smiled, still crying, and pressed his forehead to his son's. Even without words, both knew nothing would ever be the same. Enrique was seized by a wild urge to show Gabriel the whole world. To protect him, to teach him everything he knew. But more than that, just to be there, together, with no grand promises or perfect plans. To hug, to care, to be a father. The rest, they would invent together. Boris, not quite understanding, leapt onto the couch and licked Gabriel's hand, tail wagging. The boy giggled, a shy, quiet laugh. And Enrique was reminded of Sophia, her strength, that mischievous way she saw the world. That child was every last bit of purity Sophia had left behind. Time seemed to stop for a few minutes. All that existed was the embrace. The test result paper lay forgotten on the table. Its cold words could no longer explain what was happening here. What mattered were the warmth, the wet eyes, the hands clasped together. After so much searching, so many streets, so much fear, in the end it was simple. They were father and son. And now, finally, they had a home, a name, and above all, each other. When Enrique woke up that morning, it felt like the world itself had changed colors. The light pouring in through the bedroom window was more than just sunlight, it was promise. Outside, the city sounded just the same. Honking, rushing people, the distant echo of a passing motorcycle. But at home, the air was different. Gabriel was still asleep, hugging his pillow, and next to him was the necklace, glinting in the first light of day. Enrique lingered at the doorway, watching the boy breathe slowly. He'd spent years surrounded by luxury, but had never felt this way before. That desperate urge to get everything right, to patch up every hole from their past. Later, they went to the registrar's office together. Enrique couldn't bring himself to take his hand off Gabriel's shoulder, not for a second. Sometimes, Gabriel would glance up at him in disbelief, a mix of fear and joy in the boy's eyes, as if he worried the dream could end any minute. With trembling hands, Enrique signed the document, feeling as though he was finally writing his story the way it was meant to be. In the end, he handed over an ID card with both their names together. Gabriel smiled quietly, like someone discovering their place in the world. That same day, Enrique's phone wouldn't stop ringing. He called the decorator, the caterer, everyone he knew who could throw a party. He wanted a big celebration, different from anything he'd ever done before. It wasn't about showing off money. It was a symbol of beginning again, a way of shouting to the world that he'd found his son and nothing would ever be the same. The next days became a whirlwind of happy chaos. Gabriel helped pick out balloons, match the tablecloths. Sometimes he'd sneak a sweet before the party and glance around nervously, expecting a scolding, but Enrique just laughed. They found themselves giggling at everything. Their mistakes, their messes, all the things they no longer needed to hide from each other. In the corner of the living room, Gabriel drew a big sign in wobbly letters. Welcome. Enrique's eyes filled with tears, remembering his son had never had a real party, not even a cake of his own. On the eve of the party, sitting in the living room, Enrique ran his fingers over the necklace that now belonged to Gabriel, feeling the boy's mother close, her absence now tinged with gratitude. When the big day arrived, the house was transformed. Filled with music, the smell of chocolate treats, children's voices echoing through the rooms. Enrique made sure to invite all the children from the shelter he'd met while searching for Gabriel. Boys and girls of every age showed up, hand in hand with their caretakers, eyes wide at the decorations and the feast on the table. Gabriel, once so quiet and shy, was everywhere at once. He showed off his new room, his favorite toy, sharing slices of cake even when he clearly wanted it all to himself. There was a smile on his face, so bright it seemed to light up every dark corner Enrique had carried with him. When it was time to sing Happy Birthday, Enrique took a deep breath. He asked for silence with a gesture. Standing in the middle of the room, he looked at each child one by one, speaking softly, meeting their eyes just like he did with Gabriel. He told them that the pain of being abandoned hadn't only wounded Gabriel, but himself too. That even with everything life had given him, he'd been alone for years. Enrique's voice trembled. He explained that finding his son wasn't enough. He wanted to do more. So he announced he would found an organization in honor of Gabriel's mother, to truly change the lives of children like Gabriel, lost to the cold city streets. The silence was absolute. The kids might not catch the big words, but they could feel something important beginning. Gabriel never let go of his father's hand. When Enrique finished, the boy leaned his head on his father's shoulder and, for the first time, let out a quiet sob, not of fear or pain, but of relief and happiness. Enrique held him close, silently promising he would never let him be alone in the world again. During the party, the mansion's security guards stepped aside while the kids ran in and out freely. Nobody wore stern faces. The cooks served juice and little pastries nonstop, and even the waiters took off their ties to play hide-and-seek with the children. It was a joyful chaos, the kind of scene Enrique never thought could fit into his own life. As night fell and city lights blinked on outside, Gabriel sat in the garden with his dad. They didn't need to say much. A look was enough to understand. On Gabriel's chest, his mother's necklace still gleamed, now surrounded by warm arms and real promises. From the outside, it might have looked like just a party. But that night, a boy who no longer expected anything found a family, a future, and hope. And together with him, many other children discovered that sometimes, all it takes is one gesture for everything to begin.